As promised, I want to talk to you about why I'm here in Paris and why I'll never take a picture in front of the Eiffel Tower, especially as a black American, an African, a member of the African diaspora, and why that symbol of oppression is so offensive. First, our history books have us believing so many different things in so many different ways, and the way that a country is branded to us through American history books shapes our view of the country. So France has always been branded as a very positive, friendly system towards Americans. Now, it's really no different than the American education system and how we've been indoctrinated with it through our history books. Much of the history has been distorted. We see George Washington favorably, we see Abraham Lincoln favorably, we see many of these so-called founding fathers favorably without understanding the system by which they represented. So, as a black person, most of us don't understand the sordid history of the French towards Africa, the Caribbean, even in America. Even when you understand the Louisiana Purchase and you understand how the French influence in America. I didn't know any better, so as a child, my dream was to come to Paris and to take a picture in front of the Eiffel Tower without understanding what it really represented. We were told that the Statue of Liberty was a gift from the French, and all these positive things. But when you go beneath the layers and understand French imperialism, French colonialism, and what the French have done throughout the world, there's no way that I can celebrate that system. Now, this is no knock on individual people in France, because many of the people in France are not down with what the French have done and what they continue to do. When you go to Africa, you find that many Francophone countries are still, their currency is still controlled by the French, but yet they've been given the illusion of being independent. If your currency is still controlled by your colonial master, how independent are you really? So this brings me to the point of taking a picture in front of the Eiffel Tower. Many black folks, black Americans, just black people all over the world, it's our dream to come stand and take a picture in front of this symbol, but we don't understand what the symbol means. Now, I don't knock anybody for this, because I remember in my summer camp, life camp, I would always talk about how we need to take the children to go to the Washington Monument. The children right here in Washington, D.C., who have never been to the Washington Monument or the Capitol, they need to understand this history. And I remember in 2008, I was adamant about it. And I made it a part of the program where I was taking the children to these symbols of oppression. And guess what? The Washington Monument looks just like that right over there. Just like that obelisk. I didn't know the influence of Egypt even on Washington, D.C. You know, Tony Browder has a piece called Egypt on the Potomac, and how Egypt influenced Washington, D.C. So now I want you to flip around this camera right here. There's the Eiffel Tower as we stand here in Paris, France. That symbol right there, what it represents. Now, for some people, they'll argue it represents freedom and all these different things, but for the person who's a part of the African diaspora, and in particular as a black man, there's no way I can celebrate that. I'll never celebrate it as long as I live. You know, it's no different than, and this is what I realized, for those of us who don't know, okay, we get it. And whatever somebody decides to do is their business, you know. It's just that as we get more exposure, as we get more information, as we get more education, we can make better decisions. It's just like the time when you had the black people down in South Carolina, right out there going to the Boone Hall plantation, or I believe that's where it is, you know, getting married and standing there trying to look like the colonial master or the slave master. They'll go down to Savannah and take pictures in front of the very places that enslaved their ancestors. Now, some people might argue, well, you know, we're coming back to, you know, do a better representation, but oftentimes people just don't know any better. And that's what I can say. When I had those children going to the Washington Monument, I just didn't know any better, because the limited information I had, the limited information that I had about the systems. And some people say, well, that's old news. No, it's not old news, because the same players are playing the same game today. If you go throughout the world and you go to countries, Francophone countries, countries that have been colonized by the French, and you see exactly how some of the conditions are in some of those countries like Haiti and Guinea. If you go and look and understand exactly how the French still manipulate the circumstances and the conditions on the ground, there's no way you can celebrate it with really understanding it if you're really about Black Lives Mattering. If it really is about Black Lives Matter. The reason why George Floyd, when he was murdered in front of the whole world and why so many people rose up is because this same system is global. It's not local exclusively. It's a global system. It's a global problem. And once we begin to understand how deep it is from a global perspective, that's when things can begin to change. But the change has to come from within the mind. The change has to become with the self-education and not trusting the education of our children to these school systems that are designed to create clones or to create a particular product, to create a particular result, really a labor result, meaning to get them to perform and keep that same system going. So that's why it's so important. And that's why as a Black man, you'll never see me take a picture in front of that symbol of theft, lies, murder, manipulation, and oppression. Take a look at it again. That's your Eiffel Tower. Right here. Coming to you live from Paris, France. Bonjour.